For this one, I took this wire pumpkin from the Dollar Tree and I removed the outer glittery fabric, removed all the fabric off of it, and removed the light that was inside of it. They've been selling these for a couple of years, and I did get this one this year at Dollar Tree. I got this fairly small book out of a game set that my son was throwing away. You could certainly get a book from the Dollar Tree. I'm just marking where I want to essentially drill some holes in this book for each wire to go into. I used my sort of off-brand Dremel here to make those holes. If you don't have a Dremel, you could use a drill. You could also use a hand drill, which is a manual drill. I saw a crafter using one of those one day, and I want to get one of those and try it out. I was showing you there that I did go all the way through the cover and into the first couple of pages, and I did go back and go at an angle because I knew with the angle of these wires that they would be going in at an angle. I wanted them to be nice and snug. I painted the book with truffle and also the wire as well, just as a base coat. And then I went over the wire with European Gold Rub and Buff. I have this little crow tree topper from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to remove the wire that it's on. Hindsight, if I did it again, I would just cut the wire and not remove it completely, maybe use my bolt cutters and leave some wire off the bottom of his feet so that I could just put a hole in the center of the book and stick the bird down in the hole, but I didn't think about that at the time, so I'll have to make him a base. I did paint him with ink chalk paint because he had a little bit of a sheen. I have these letters. They came with a box. They're vinyl letters, so you could use stickers. I just saved these thinking I might use those one day for crafting, but you could certainly find letter stickers this size or just hand draw whatever title you want on the book or not even put a title on the book. It's just going to be showing on the spine. I wanted to make this book look older and in rougher shape, so I'm just going to Mod Podge this craft colored tissue paper, and so it's going to wrinkle, and I want it to wrinkle, so I'm really trying to Mod Podge this tissue paper on here sort of haphazardly so that it's not smooth and perfect. In fact, the back ended up more bumpy than the front, and I was wishing that the underneath, that the front was just as bumpy as the back, but it turned out fine. I'm covering up most of it. You won't be able to see most of this book, but I wanted to give the book a different feel. And doing this had the added advantage of toning down the gold of those letters. They were a little shiny, so putting this over that really toned those down. I did wrap the edges of the cover with that tissue paper as well, just brought it around for a more finished look. And then I had to re-poke those holes where I covered them up with the tissue paper. And then I gave this a good coat of antique wax, not really rubbing off any of it, just doing pretty solid coverage with the antique wax over that tissue paper. It gave the book sort of an old wrinkled leather look to it. I really like how it turned out. And I did also apply some antique wax to the edges of those pages as well. I used this super glue really solely because the applicator, it was so tiny. I don't have any other fine point applicator glues, and so I used this super glue here, and it seemed to work very well, and the wire went down in these holes very snug anyway, so I don't think I was able to lift this up by the wire, and it was a good hold. So I created a sort of pumpkin bird cage with this pumpkin and this book here. Now to make the base for the crow, I took a tumbling tower block from the Dollar Tree and just cut that in half with my miter shears. At first I wasn't going to bother with closing up the book permanently, but then I decided, because as I was picking it up by the bird cage, the bottom the book was flopping open, and so I just glued the cover and the back to the the inside pages there. And then I just went around the edges of the pages on the outside with some Mod Podge, and that will prevent the book. You wouldn't think that it would, but it completely closes the book up and prevents you from opening it. And so that will be, a permanent thing there. Now to make the materials for the nest that I'm going to build for the crow in here. And I just did a couple different, I made strips of book pages that I had, and then I also did an accordion style fold and then made some accordion style filler there to stick in the Spanish moss. And then I wanted to set a little skull and a little pumpkin in there. I decided later on not to go with the skull, but I made 2 of the pumpkins. I gave those a coat of chalk paint just as a base coat, and then I'll be going over that with Rub and Buff a little later. I just sandwiched the crow's feet between those 2 tumbling tower block pieces and using hot glue and E6000, and then I glued the bird to the book. I decided I didn't like the little skull because it had a very goofy smile to it, and I just didn't really like the way it looked. So I went with 2 of the pumpkins, went over those with European Gold Rub and Buff. I sort of wish I hadn't have made the nest so big. It covered up, the bird cage look. It was a little too much. I should have made the nest smaller, just around the crow's feet to hide the base. And I think I'll go back in, later and remove some of that nest. I just went a little bit crazy with it. I had these foam bones from the Dollar Tree that I painted with toasted marshmallow acrylic paint, and I stuck those inside the nest as well. This is just a quick reminder that if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any future videos. And if you hit the notification bell, it'll remind you when I upload a video. That way you don't miss any. For this one, I have just this little foam pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. They should have them again this year. I haven't seen them yet, but they have them every year in either white or orange, and either of those would work. And I just cut out with an X-Acto knife a scared looking ghost face. I took this Model Magic that I got from Walmart, and I did have to use the entire package of that on this project. I'm just covering this pumpkin entirely with that Model Magic. I did make sure that I press down on those little indentions that a pumpkin has, and it was fairly easy to find them that were already in the foam pumpkin. And I used just a marker to sort of roll out any little humps. As you're messing with this pumpkin, with this foam clay, you are, leaving finger indentions and stuff. So it was pretty easy to just roll that marker on there to smooth out the humps and bumps that I was creating as I was handling it. And then I did cover that stem as well. I have these hands from the Dollar Tree. They come in a pretty big multi-pack, a whole lot of them in one pack. I'm just going to use 2 of them. And I did give those a base coat of ivory chalk paint. And then I went over that with the toasted marshmallow, which is a pretty good color for bones. Cashew by Waverly is a pretty good color for bones as well. I did paint the eyes and mouth black of our little ghost. I painted the stem with truffle chalk paint, but I ended up not liking that color, so I did go back and basically just paint it white near the end. What made these hands look very good was going over them with antique wax and wiping away the excess. I'm pretty sure you can see there's some pretty severe cracks going on in the paint, and I'm not sure, maybe because I painted it before the foam clay dried, but I really loved how it looked. And I'm not a fan of the crackling of the paint that a lot of people like. I've never liked that for some odd reason, because I'm odd, I guess. And but with this, it being a Halloween craft, it really fit well, and I really loved how that paint cracked. I did put that chalk paint on pretty thick, and that's probably the culprit of why it cracked, because I put it on so thick. A lot of times if you put too thick of a coat of paint on, it will crackle. I just hot glued the hands on the face. Now I saw something similar to this, very similar to this, for sale on a decor, a website that sells home decor. And I thought, well, I could make that. But I'm not 100% sure if, I think this is supposed to be, the ghost is scared because something behind the ghost is coming up from behind and covering the ghost's eyes. Or this might be supposed to be his hands. I'm not sure. Either way, I think it's pretty cute. It's sort of up for interpretation. This is just a quick reminder that if you're looking for any of the supplies or tools that I'm using, they're probably in my Amazon shop. So if you just visit amazon.com/shop/craftclassy, you will find those supplies and tools. But if there's ever something not in there that you're looking for, just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you and let you know where I got that item. For this one, I took one of those skeleton garlands from the Dollar Tree, and I just removed one of the skeletons, and I have this candle holder here from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to glue the little skeleton to the candle holder with some E6000, glue him standing up, and this worked out very well, just to apply the glue, then set him on the glue, and then tape his feet down and leave that tape on there until the glue sets up. And I did the same thing to his hand for him to hold on to the candlestick there. I'm going to make him a top hat, and hindsight, I wish I would have just made it out of paper. I realized that once I had it completely made, I just was on autopilot, I guess, and I made it out of this self-adhesive felt here, but I'm going to paint the entire piece the same color, like monochromatic, if that's the right word. And it makes more sense if you're going to paint something to make it out of paper or cardboard, not fabric. But it did end up, it had a neat texture in the end, and it was fine. The paint and the rub and buff went on the fabric okay. So it turned out fine. But if I had to do it over again, I would have made it out of paper or, poster board. I just freehanded this little hat and made the, the base of it out of a piece of glue stick. And then that way it's stiff and it stands up for me. And that if I would have used cardstock or poster board, that would have I would have needed the glue stick in there. But anyways, I just hot glued it together, and I did cut a hole in the bottom of the hat because I knew I was going to be hot gluing it to the skull. And so I wanted it to, sit down on his head really well. I didn't want that fabric sort of in between the hot glue and the head, if that makes sense. I did want his other arm to be just different. It was just super straight. And so I just cut it at an angle, and then I did the same thing. I used E6000 and some tape to hold that on there to make a crook in his arm. I painted everything with truffle chalk paint. Then I went over everything with the European Gold rub and buff. I ran out of time, but I think it would be really cute if you also made a cane for him to hold in his outstretched hand there. A set of these would be really cute with each skeleton doing something different in a different position. For this one, I have this skull from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to cut a hole in the bottom for the light pack the battery pack for the lights that's going to go inside there in the lights. At first I was going to use my Dremel for the whole thing, and then I realized I could just make cut a hole or a slit and then just use scissors. Scissors worked really well to cut open that hole there. And I did use my Dremel to cut a hole in each eye socket for the light to come through. And then I just took my needle nose pliers to be able to get inside that skull without making the hole any bigger and just push those lights through those holes in his eyes. I made a base for this skull to sit in out of a canning ring and a piece of garbage, a piece of cardboard. The base, it'll look nice, but it's mostly the purpose of it is just to hide that battery pack that he's going to be glued to. I just glued him to that with some hot glue, and that held very nicely. I did give his base a base coat of truffle chalk paint. And then I will put up the thumbnail and the date of the video where I first did this technique if you want to go watch that. I don't want to go back to basics on it, but I just took cotton balls and shredded them, and then I made this glue out of cornstarch and water. You can certainly use watered down school glue to do this as well, but the starch water is not as sticky. So if you just go to that video, I can show you how I made the glue and just the basics about it. The only reason why there's some brown there when I hadn't rinsed out my brush very well from where I painted that base. So that's why there's brown, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to paint this in the end anyway. I just applied the cotton to the skull and I went pretty much over the entire thing, even inside his eye sockets and his nose hole. The only thing I didn't cover is his teeth, just the teeth themselves. I didn't like how the light was shining through the entire skull. I decided I wanted the light just to shine out of his eyes. So what I did is I pulled the lights back out, except for the ones in his eyes, of course. And then I just took some masking tape and covered each light and then painted the tips there where the light was shining through with black paint. And that blocked out the light completely. I thought that gave it a much better look. You could keep going. If you want him to look less decomposed, you could keep adding with the cotton. About forgot the word cotton. But I did go over that. I didn't even wait for it to dry. I painted the entire thing, except for the eyes, with the toasted marshmallow and the nose. But I did paint the eye sockets and the nose socket with black paint, just some black acrylic paint. And then I used some antique wax to just age this up and to make it to where it's not so stark, to give it a better look. I just did some blending and some, making it look more decrepit. I used European Gold Rub and Buff on the base of it, and then I just tucked some Spanish moss around that battery pack. This definitely gave this skull a different look, and it's pretty creepy. I don't know. It's so creepy, I don't know if I'm going to keep it. It's kind of creeps me out. I feel like it's looking at me when I'm in there with it, but I think it definitely looks spooky, and it definitely, took a cheap skull and made it into something, that you might see for more money in a store. There is something new, guys, on YouTube. It's called Hype, and I don't even know all about it yet. I haven't had the time to look it up, but apparently you get a certain number of videos a day that you can click Hype on. And so if you come across a video that you think they did an especially good job or you liked it a lot, you can choose that video for one of your hypes. And so that will push that video out to more viewers. And so if you ever watch one of my videos, maybe this one that you especially like, or you think, I did a good job on it, you could click that hype button or click the hype. I think it's right next to like. And then that will push that video out. It'll help me out a lot. And it's, easy and free to do, as well as liking and subscribing are easy and free to do. And those are just free ways to help out my channel. And I really do appreciate it. But that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.